Let's discuss requesting the extended absence. This can be done from the Request Extended Absence page. To navigate here from UC Path, select PeopleSoft menu and either navigate through this menu or you can select the UC Path Work Center. Start at the menu, then Global Payroll and Absence Management, then Payee Data, Maintain Absences, UC Customizations, and finally select Request Extended Absence. There are various types of leaves of absence: medical, workers' compensation, sabbaticals, etc. There are also family medical leaves, FML. This includes FMLA, CFRA, and PDLL. These are leaves that can be layered on top of other leaves. You can't use them individually without pairing them with another leave. The reason you layer on top is that FML leave protects the employee's job while they're on leave so that they can't be let go during that time. If the employee has FML coverage, they also get to keep their benefits at no additional cost. Otherwise, if an employee is on an unpaid leave of absence, they are responsible for the full cost of their benefit. When it comes to FML leaves, the topic of Pay for Family Care and Bonding, PFCB, arises. PFCB is not a type of leave, but a form of pay during FML. Please note, PDLL is not eligible for PFCB. Enter the search criteria to find the applicable employee and click Search. The FMLA CFRA eligibility section provides details on FMLA CFRA eligibility within UC Path. This section also offers override checkboxes if an override is needed based on a manual calculation. The FMLA or CFRA eligibility will be checked if the employee is eligible for FML. But if they are wrong for whatever reason, you can check the override checkbox to the right to be able to enter the associated leave. The eligibility for FML calculates on a rolling 12-month basis. The current service months and eligibility hours, working hours during the prior 12 months, not including vacation or sick time, are displayed. These values are used to calculate FML eligibility. An employee needs 12 months of service in order to be eligible for FML, as well as 1,250 hours of eligibility. The FMLA CFRA PDLL balances and takes section provides details on balances and usage, or takes. Please keep in mind FML is automatically decremented in UC Path for unpaid FML covered leaves. For paid FML covered leaves, the FML balance is decreased through earn codes selected in CalTime, Manage Accruals Transactions, or by entering into the FMLA CFRA PDL Adjustment Hours field. If someone has used FML leave within the year, then you will see that within the balances and takes area, 480 hours is generally the full allotment of FML, and this would then be reduced by the number of hours that had been taken. The FML balance resets every January on an annual basis. If the employee has taken leave covered by FML that has been decremented in the system in the last year, you will see balances for how much time was taken and how much remains. For manual FML calculations, policy, and additional information on eligibility, please contact the Berkeley Benefits and Leaves team. The Extended Absence Summary section provides a history of leaves taken. This shows the prior 2 years of leaves, if any. This particular employee does not have any leaves that have been entered in the last 2 years. The new Extended Absence Request section allows you to indicate one or more leave of absence requests. There are a few links at the top right corner of the Request Extended Absence section. You can review the employee's benefit summary to view and print the employee's current benefit selection through the Benefit Summary Worksheet. The Benefit Summary Worksheet allows employees to select benefits to continue during an unpaid leave of absence. If the employee is on an unpaid FML covered leave of absence, then they will still be able to elect whether or not they want to maintain benefits. If the employee is going on a paid leave of absence, then they are not able to elect to stop benefits during the leave of absence. If you navigate through either of these links, you can return to this page by clicking the Return to Extended Absence page at the bottom of either page. The next section is the Extended Absence Summary, which includes up to 2 years of leave history. If there were multiple pages, you could click View All to display all of the leave history. To export it to an Excel sheet, you could click the spreadsheet icon. Select the tabs to view additional leave information. We will go over these tabs further while discussing entering a new extended absence request. Let's say that we received a request to put an employee on an unpaid personal leave from Monday, March 7th through Friday, March 25th. The first step is going to be in the New Extended Absence Request section. Enter the start date, which is the date that the employee begins leave. This date becomes the effective date of the leave in job data. The expected return date is the date the employee is expected to return to work. If this date changes in the future, for example, if the employee is going to extend their leave, it is important to come back into the system and make an edit to ensure that the expected return date is accurate, as many reports pull data based on the expected return date field. The actual return date should be left blank for the initial absence request. This field is completed after the employee returns to work. The only leave request that you do usually fill in the actual return date for is for sabbaticals, because it is pretty certain that that is the date that they are going to be back. The leave, FMLA CFRA PDLL leave, and paid unpaid fields identify details about the leave and whether it should be paid or unpaid. These fields also identify how the UC Path Center WFA production team should enter the leave in the employee's job data. Either the leave field and or the FMLA CFRA PDLL leave field must be entered. The leave field becomes available after you enter the start date and the expected return date field. Select the type of leave from the list of values. The leave options that appear in the list are dependent on the eligibility group assigned to the job. For example, academic employees have sabbatical options. In this example, we have an employee who is going to be taking a personal leave. The leave types that include the asterisks may be FML eligible and therefore also require the consideration of whether or not the FMLA CFRA PDLL leave field should be completed per federal or state law. Accurate entry of these fields is important because they may affect the employee's pay, sick accrual, vacation accrual, FMLA CFRA PDL balances, and so on. The next field is the paid unpaid field, which identifies whether the leave is paid or unpaid. For this example, the employee is taking a leave of absence that is unpaid, so we'll select Unpaid block. If an employee is going on a leave that is unpaid for the first 2 weeks, where the employee plans to use sick leave or vacation time or some other form of accrual to cover their pay during that period, and then paid for the remainder of the leave, a single line should be entered and it should be marked as a paid block. Use CalTime or Manage Accruals to document the use of sick or vacation time. The last date worked field is required for all leaves. A message appears if this field is blank when you attempt to save or submit the request. Enter the last day the employee was physically at work. If this employee started their leave on Monday, March 7th, then their last day worked was most likely Friday, March 4th. The date entered in this field must be prior to the leave start date and is typically 1 day prior. If there is a weekend or holiday, then it might be more than 1 day prior. The purpose of this field is to inform the UC Path Center benefits and billing of the employee's last day worked because it could be used to complete the UC statements to the disability vendor if needed. Click Notes to add comments on what leave is being entered and why. In this case, I will put approved unpaid leave of absence from 3/7/2022 to 3/25/2022. Let's say there's a second leave included in the request for this employee. So in addition to taking an unpaid leave of absence from March 7th to March 25th, the employee has a surgery scheduled for March 28th and will be out for 2 weeks for recovery following the surgery. During this time, they will be on an FML-covered leave and receive pay by using their available sick leave. To add a second leave row, click the plus sign. The start date of the second row must be the same as the expected return date from the previously entered leave row. In this case, that is March 28th. Keep in mind, we're at this moment putting in a consecutive leave, so we can't have a gap between the 2 leave entries where the employee returns to work. In this example, the employee needs 2 weeks of recovery time, so the expected return date is Monday, April 11th. Again, we're going to leave the actual return date blank because the employee hasn't returned to work yet. The leave will be a medical leave, which indicates a leave for the employee's serious health condition. By selecting one of the leave types with an asterisk, an information message appears as a reminder that the extended absence may also qualify for FML coverage. The FMLA CFRA PDLL field is needed only when the leave is specific to FMLA, CFRA, or PDLL. So now this dropdown will also be available. From the dropdown, various FML-covered leaves and leave combinations can be selected. If the leave will be covered by Paid Family Care and Bonding, also known as PFCB, this is also where that would be indicated in the system. For this employee, we are going to select Employee Serious Health Condition, SHC, FMLA. This employee is going to be on a paid leave of absence for this time, so we will select Paid Block because they will be using their sick leave during the time. The last date worked field is the same. The employee hasn't been back to work since the day in the previous row. Let's discuss one more field that is available for this leave type. The FMLA CFRA PDLL Adjustment Hours field becomes available when an FML covered leave is selected. The system automatically calculates FML balance deductions for unpaid leaves based on a 40-hour work week made up of 5 8-hour days, prorated based on the FTE if the employee is less than 1.0 FTE. If the employee is on an unpaid leave of absence and has an intermittent schedule, this field can be used to override the system calculation to enter the exact number of FML hours that should be deducted from the balance for the leave. For a paid leave of absence, the UCPath system does not calculate FML balance deductions. Instead, this must be done manually one of 3 ways. During a paid leave of absence, FMLA CFRA PDL hours can be sent through CalTime by selecting FMLA Leave Without Pay, FMLA Sick, or FMLA Vacation as the pay code when entering the time into CalTime. A separate transaction could be entered into the Manage Accruals module to decrease the employee's FML balance by the amount taken, or the amount of FML hours being used during this leave can be entered into the FMLA CFRA PDL Adjustment Hours field. For this employee, if they are not going to have hours entered into CalTime, then 80 hours can be entered here to account for the 80 FML hours used during this period. A Manage Accrual transaction would need to be entered to decrease their sick time for 80 hours as well. It is important to be aware of how the FML hours taken will be deducted from the employee's FML balance when the employee is on a paid FML covered leave. If the FML accrual deduction is not entered, the balance will not be decreased. If the FML balance is deducted in multiple places, for example, both in CalTime and through the FMLA CFRA PDL Adjustment Hours field, then the employee will have their hours double decremented. There are a few other tabs that are always available when entering leaves. The Job Earning Distribution, JED tab, is the Additional Earning Codes tab. When you select the JED Additional Earning Codes tab, the earning code fields appear to the right of the absence request fields. Keep in mind the earnings code list only displays earn codes based on the employee's pay group. This tab can only be used if the employee is taking a leave that is partially paid and partially unpaid. The paid-unpaid status should reflect paid block for partial paid leaves. The sum of the percentages must equal 100%. For example, if the employee has a medical leave that was 80% paid and 20% unpaid, the paid portion would be entered using the earn code reg for regular and then entering 80 into the percent field. The unpaid portion would be entered using LPJ, leave without pay, for JED, and 20% would be entered into the percent field. These fields must always be entered as percentages. If the paid or unpaid portions are split by dollar amounts, calculate the percentages and enter them into the field. Please also include your calculations in the transaction notes. Let's delete this example though because JED should not be entered for FMLA, CFRA, PDLL, or sabbatical leaves. Partial sabbatical leave distribution percentages are entered on the sabbatical tab, which is available when a sabbatical leave type is selected. We talk more about the sabbatical tab in the section on dynamic tabs. The next tab is the Job Overrides tab. When an absence request is entered into job data by the UC Path Center WFA production team, they enter it for all of the employees' active job records within the requesting business unit, so here at UC Berkeley. Records that are without salary, WOS, contingent workers, CWR, or short work break, SWB, are not put on leave. The Job Overrides tab lets us indicate to the WFA production team if there is a specific job that is not going on leave. This tab displays 2 fields, Exclude Jobs and Job Override for approval. Use the Exclude Jobs field when the employee has more than one job and we must exclude one or more jobs from the leave of absence. For example, an employee may have 2 jobs but may only be going on leave for one of the 2 jobs. So if the employee that is going on leave is initially only going on leave from the secondary job, but they are going to continue working their primary job, click the Search button, the magnifying glass, which will appear if the employee has more than one job. Then select the primary job, Ample Record 0, to exclude the primary job from the leave for this employee because they are only going on leave for the secondary job. When the system is deciding who to send the approval to, it bases it off the primary job. Because the employee is only going on leave for the secondary job, the approval needs to route to approvers related to the secondary job. In the Job Override for Approval field, enter a 1 to indicate that the request needs to route based on the employee's secondary job, EMPL Record 1, instead of the primary job, EMPL Record 0, because we are excluding the primary job from the initial leave. The last tab here is the Attachments tab. The Attachments tab displays the attachments link. Before attachments can be added, though, we have to go back to the Extended Absence Details tab and save the leave entry. To add attachments, then navigate to the Attachments tab, click the link to upload attachments, select the entry ID, and then click Add Attachments. I'm not going to add any attachments to our leave example, so instead I'm going to click Go to Extended Absence Request to return to the previous page. You can include confidential documents, such as FML certification, as attachments. To submit these leaves, we are going to return to the Extended Absence Details tab. We need to make sure that we have notes included for both leaves. At this point, we entered a note for the first leave, but not yet for the second. To add a note, click Notes, and enter information related to the leave and any important calculations or details. Notes are required every time a leave of absence is requested or edited. An error message will pop up if an initiator attempts to submit the transaction without notes. Notes are the only way to record the history of actions taken on a request. Leave initiators, approvers, and the UC Path Center WFA production team rely on the notes to understand the history of the leave request, as well as for guidance in processing the absence request in the employee's job data. Ensure that the notes entered align with the leave request information. Be sure to mention if you entered information on the dynamic tabs, such as the JED tab or the Pay Period for AY Academics tab, or if any attachments were added. For example, for this leave, a note might say, Approved FML Covered Paid Leave, Employee Using Sick Time, for Employee Serious Health Condition from 3/28/22 through 4/8/2022. Then click OK. Once complete, click Save to save the transaction for later, or click Submit to submit the transaction for approval. If you click Save, you can access the transaction later from the Request Extended Absence page to update and submit it for approval. Once you are done, click Submit to send the leave to the Berkeley UC Path Absence Management Approver. Then you can see that leave we just submitted is now listed under the Extended Absence Summary section with the workflow status of submitted. The same process can be followed for the second leave. Click Submit. The leaves are listed by date with the highest date on top. So the first leave the employee is going on, 3/7 to 3/28, is row 2, and the second leave, from 3/28 through 4/11, is row 1. After submitting the transaction, the initiator will get notification emails saying it has been submitted. Follow your local process for contacting your approver to let them know that the transaction needs to be approved.